I think the thing that threatens our brand, or that could threaten our brand over the long term, is a lack of industry standard metrics across the industry. And so one of several things that we're proposing out of those critical challenges that we've identified is we want to be able to provide a scorecard for all of our chambers of commerce that are measured on 6 key metrics. It hopefully will solve a problem where, look, hey, my chamber might be doing well, or we think we're doing well, but how are we really performing next to our peers, right? No one really knows that. And that's what we're really trying to do here.
Well, hey everybody, I'm Brian Erickson, and with me today is Matt Appenzeller, and it is a true pleasure to be able to have you guys along with me. So Matt is the CEO of SOCA, or the Southern Ohio Chamber Alliance, and they provide a lot of value to a whole lot of businesses all across the area. And I'm really excited for you to be able to dig in and tell more about what you guys do, how you help people, and you and I were talking off camera, some really cool stuff that you guys are developing to help chambers understand if they're winning. And so I'm really excited to hear a little bit about what you're seeing out there, but we're going to get there. Before we get there, tell me a little bit about your journey, because obviously you've been doing a lot of this stuff for a while. So what kind of brought you to the point that you are now as the CEO of SOCA?
Yeah, well, first of all, we kind of tease each other in our industry that no one goes to college to be a Chamber of Commerce executive. Right? It just sort of happens in your career. So I had been, working in a number of firms, and in this case, our family business in Preble County, Ohio, and the local chamber there needed someone with some sales experience who could grow the membership. And after just setting up a basic sales system, we had a record year, and then we had another record year. And then they asked me to be the executive director, and I was doing that, actually part-time.
Oh, man.
Still working in the family business, but they asked me to be the executive director, and I had to tell my dad, I think this is kind of a cool thing here, and I'm going to do that. What
was the family business, by the way?
A memorial garden and funeral home.
Wow.
So I used to do all the pre-need stuff there.
Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. That is, I feel like, an emotionally difficult job to be in. Holy smokes.
It is. My dad, it takes a certain temperament, and my mom and dad ran that Preble Memory Gardens for many years, and they're just very special people.
Wow.
Very special.
That's incredible. Yeah. Well, good on you. That's a hard business to start in. Yeah. My goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Sorry, I derailed you.
No,
so you're now full-time into your local chamber.
Right. So we were able to start an economic and workforce development program up in Preble County called the Preble County Development Partnership. That still exists today. Actually, a friend of mine is running that. His name's Justin Summer, and he's doing a great job up there. But I had served on the SOCA board of directors at that time after a while. And when at that time the executive director decided she wanted to move on to other pursuits, they asked me to fill her shoes. At that time, the Affordable Care Act was being implemented, and it was sort of turning the health insurance world on its head.
Yeah.
Well, SOCA historically has always had some sort of health insurance program, partnered with, historically, with Anthem. At one time, we also had a partnership with United Healthcare, but it was really threatening what we had been doing. And so we regrouped, we met a few other people, and we were able to partner with Anthem and some other folks to start a self-insured plan. The technical name of it is a multiple employer welfare arrangement. It's also known as a MIWA. Mm-hmm. So, Brian, we thought this would be like a temporary thing.
Of course.
Until Congress got its act together and, kind of buttoned up some of the loose ends that were in the Affordable Care Act as it related to small employers.
Yeah.
And about a year and a half into it, Brian, we found out that Congress wasn't going to do anything anytime soon. So we just put our foot on the accelerator, and here we are. Gosh, it took 3 years of planning. We had the first day one of operation on May 1, 2016, but here we are 8.5 years later, and we are the largest MIWA of its kind in the United States.
Wow.
We have well over 7,000 employers in the health plan. All of them are attached to a Chamber of Commerce membership throughout our chambers that we work with in Ohio.
Wow.
And it's been very gratifying, and it's been quite humbling, to be honest with you, to provide this kind of value to so many small employers throughout Ohio. Because, as you know, I just mentioned, my parents ran a small business for quite a long time, and I know what saving some money and being able to provide benefits to your employees means to a lot of those folks.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, coming from someone who owns a small business, like it is almost backbreaking when you get some of those quotes from independent insurance organizations or brokers or something like that. It's like, oh my gosh, this is insane. Correct. And to have someone like yourself, that's incredible. And I want to dig into this here in just a second. But I'm curious, so it sounds like for a grand majority of your career, you've been involved in somehow a chamber or or SOCA specifically.
That's right.
So how long has it been now that you've been a part of SOCA?
So it's 12 years with SOCA.
Okay.
And overall, I've been in what we don't call it an industry, we call it the chamber world.
I've
been in the chamber world
yeah.
For going on 18 years now.
Wow.
17 and a half. Yeah.
Okay. Incredible. Okay. So you join up with SOCA 12 years ago, and you had heard of them obviously prior when you were a part of your chamber, because SOCA's been around for a long time. For the person who's listening, obviously we have some people that are probably listening who are part of chambers, maybe even leadership of chambers, but talk a little bit more about what SOCA is designed to do for organizations and for specifically for chambers, and then also for the businesses in them.
So we exist to create value for chambers of commerce, and we do that in 3 ways. We partner with carriers, brokers, and other value partners so that we can develop cost-saving and value-added programs, and then offer those programs through chambers of commerce so that they can offer them to their members. Now that sounds a little bit convoluted, but in a nutshell, what we do is we negotiate benefits and affinity programs for chambers of commerce so that they can offer them to members. We've been doing it for 32 years now. The bread and butter of what we've done historically, again, has been in the healthcare space, but we also do things with workers' comp group rating. We have merchant service processing and point of sale systems through Elevon. We have an energy program that, Ohio has kind of 2 markets. You have a regulated market and you have an unregulated market. And a lot of small employers wouldn't know that unless someone like me or one of our partners told them that. So, you have some choices, with regard to, how you purchase your energy, and you may or may not be able to lower your energy bill, but if you can, we have a program for you.
Yeah, I have loved, so I grew up in Kentucky, and they didn't have energy choice capability down in Kentucky, at least when I was there. And when I came to Ohio and I realized that was a thing, oh my gosh, I was saving so much money. And I love that you guys are helping to broker that for people. I think that's fantastic.
It's a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
Yep.
So obviously, you guys are known as the benefits people. That's who you guys are.
Yeah, within the chambers of commerce.
Within the chambers of commerce, which is a massive amount of businesses that are involved in some chamber in some way. It feels like, at least from my perspective. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, our programs touch over 10,000 employers, and all of those are tied to a Chamber of Commerce membership to one of the 129 chambers of commerce that we deal with. So I would say that about 30% of all businesses, 29% are a member of their local chamber of commerce. Mm-hmm. And our job is to say, hey, in order for you to get to maximize the value of your chamber membership, take a look at our programs.
Yeah.
We think that we can save you some money in addition to all the other things that particular chamber might be offering.
That's awesome. Yeah. I've been seeing that, a 30% market saturation is pretty incredible when it comes to that sort of thing. And so for you guys to be introduced as the primary partner, at least that's the way you were introduced to me when I joined a chamber, is like, hey, these are our people that help you out. Like, this is how you get benefits. That's amazing.
Well, let's talk about just the Chamber of Commerce brand for a minute.
Let's talk about it.
So the Chamber of Commerce brand is hundreds of years old, right? And in this country, it actually predates the Revolutionary War. See, that's a fun fact that you probably never would have known. So the New York Chamber of Commerce was formed in 1768, and it was originally formed for the merchants of the harbor, so that they could have like uniform measurements, and so that people were charging the same sort of prices for things, and also to prevent theft. The King of England at the time gave them a charter. And obviously that became very problematic in 1775 when the Revolutionary War was started. It actually split that chamber in a couple of factions, right? You had one faction that supported the king, the other faction that were the American patriots. And so anyway, there's your history lesson of how a chamber starts, right? So obviously it has grown throughout the United States over the course of 250 years. Mm-hmm. And just in the state of Ohio alone, I think Ohio has actually the most chambers of commerce in any state. We have about 315 chambers of commerce just in the state of Ohio, right? So
are those mostly town-based or county-based, or what? I don't exactly know how those
Most of them
form.
are town-based.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow, 315.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's a big market out there. We have 129 chambers in our alliance. There's also an alliance in Northern Ohio called the Northern Ohio Area Chambers of Commerce. They're almost an identical organization to us, and we communicate and we partner with them on some things as well.
Wow. Okay. So obviously the brand has existed for a really long time. One of the things that you and I were talking about before we got on camera was there's not a lot of measurements, though, for what a chamber is and can do, and even what is winning for a chamber. So I know that you're super passionate about this. So kind of walk me through what you're trying to do and what you're seeing as the problem right now.
Yeah. So let me start at the beginning. Like, again, I've been doing this for 12 years, right? I before we hired Will Roberts, I used to spend a lot of time on the road visiting these chambers, speaking at events, and speaking with their leadership. And over the course of 12 years, we identified 4 critical challenges that these chambers are facing. Remember, these are towns, right? Just in the Cincinnati area, or let's just say Hamilton County, I think we've got about 14 chambers just in Hamilton.
A ton of them, yeah.
Right. So the critical challenges are the inability to invest in and implement technology, the lack of industry standard metrics, leadership turnover, and complacency. I want to direct your attention to that second one just for a few minutes. In many other industries across the United States, there are some standard metrics that the entire industry has to follow. In our industry, those metrics have not been established yet. So the common joke among how we sort of poke fun at each other is that, if you've seen one chamber of commerce, you've seen one, right?
Because nothing is the same.
Right, because nothing is the same. What happens here in, let's just say Glendale, right, in Cincinnati, is not the same thing that's going to be happening over in the Claremont County Chamber. It's just not. But I think the thing that threatens our brand, or that could threaten our brand over the long term, is a lack of industry standard metrics across the industry. And so one of several things that we're proposing out of those critical challenges that we've identified is we want to be able to provide a scorecard for all of our chambers of commerce that are measured just on 6 key metrics. I'm not going to recite the metrics here and for everybody, but at the very least, all of these chambers can be measured on those 6 things, right? And so it hopefully will solve a problem where, look, hey, my chamber might be doing well, or we think we're doing well, but how are we really performing next to our peers, right? No one really knows that. And that's what we're really trying to do here is to say, hey, yes, you're performing, or maybe you're just marginally performing, but compared to the rest of the industry, and specifically compared to a cohort of your size, right, this is how you're actually performing. And so that's something that we've hired some developers to help us out with, and we hope to have that scorecard rolled out here within the next 6 months.
That's actually really exciting, because I was invited to, I think what it was called, like a core team meeting for one of the chambers over on the east side of Cincinnati. And it was incredible because they were starting to talk numbers, and they were also saying, like, trying to compare to the other chambers around us, because all the chambers, at least on the east side, they all meet once a month together, and they mingle all the time. I love it. It's fantastic. And it was hard because they were literally saying, I mean, we don't know how we're doing compared to the other chambers. Right. I mean, we think we're doing great, and we think we're helping our people.
Exactly.
And one of the things I think that's curious is, for me, is will this scorecard also help them understand if they're also helping their members alongside of just competing, or how are they doing compared to other chambers?
Well, I think in the future we could probably do that, but for right now, we just want to measure them organizationally. What we can also do, I think, in the future is, let's figure out what kind of, not just how many members you have, but what level of engagement do you have? Like, how many of your members are working on a task force, or serving on a board or a committee? That kind of thing. How many of them are actually sponsoring events? Not just, hey, we went to our biggest companies here and we asked for a little bit of money, but how many of them are actively paying for things, for sponsorships, in addition to their membership? So I think at some point we can start building in some engagement for that, but we're just not there yet.
Oh man, but I still think that's an exciting thing, because knowing the leadership of the chambers that I know, like, they are desperate to understand if they're winning.
Yeah,
that is a big thing. Yeah, and I think because a lot of them feel like they're working themselves really hard without knowing what the end goal is.
That's exactly right, Brian.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And, you don't know what you don't know. And I think it's really dangerous for our industry to have the blinders on. And, we always say that we're doing this because we want to help chambers of commerce plan better and make better decisions. Well, if you don't know how you compare to the rest of your industry, it's hard to know whether you're making a good decision or a bad one. Right? Let me give you an example, right? And we've used this before in groups. So let's just say that you and I are, you're chamber A and I'm chamber B, right? And we said here that the market penetration rate that is kind of accepted in the industry is like 29%. Well, if you are chamber A and you have a market penetration rate of 21%, well, the decision's pretty easy for you. You need to step up your sales effort, So it's not just getting out there, but you probably need some better processes, and you just need to have a plan, a sales plan, and work your plan, right? On the other hand, if I'm Chamber B and my market penetration rate is 37%, right? If I don't know what that standard market penetration rate is, right, or what it should be, if I do the same thing that you just did, I'm probably going to be spinning my wheels because I'm already
far
outpacing.
Above.
Yeah, I'm outpacing what is the standard metric for market penetration in the industry, but I didn't know the metric in the first place. So it's going to be a point of diminishing returns. It's probably a bad decision. It's probably a bad use of my resources to do that. I'm probably better off really trying to do some non-dues revenue programs rather than trying to grow the membership. So that's really what we're after here, is to determine, what these metrics are, at least for our industry here in Ohio, and then, maybe we can take it nationally, but to help these chambers plan better and make better decisions, because otherwise you're just flying blind out there.
That's incredible. Now, are you using other chambers, like other alliances and other things like that, and are you trying to get their numbers in the development of this scorecard?
So we've done a couple of things, right? One thing is there is an entity known as the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives. It's actually an international organization, and they do produce some data of their members. Their members are chamber executives. They do produce that every couple of years, right? The problem is that with that organization, there's a couple of barriers. First of all, you got to be a member of their organization. Second of all, you have to participate in their rather lengthy asking for data. And to me, and again, they do a great job. First of all, they're an outstanding resource. But what I think ends up happening is that they're really collecting data on the best performing chambers. And so you have a data set that really represents only the best performing chambers in specific categories.
Kind of that p-hacking idea.
Yeah,
yes.
Right?
Okay.
So what we need, in my opinion, and what SOCA is working toward, is we not only need the best performing chambers, but we need everybody else as well, right? So that we can determine what median averages actually are, right? And everybody can, sort of make better decisions as a consequence of that. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're just, everything is just skewed toward the upper end of the spectrum.
Yeah. And you may be in a chamber that is small, rural, and you can never hit those numbers.
That's right.
That a massive metro might be able to hit.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So you need to know what a true average is, and a weighted average would be.
That's exactly right.
That's cool.
So that's what we're attempting to do. So back to your original question, one of the other things that we're doing is, so we've asked our chambers, our 129 chambers, to, we actually formed a test group first, and we asked them to provide us with their 3 primary zip codes if you were a local chamber. If you're a countywide chamber, we asked them to provide us with their 6 primary zip codes. Okay? Then they send us their membership list. And from that data, what we can do is tell them what their market penetration rate is in each of those zip codes. We can also tell them what their participation rates are for employers in SOCA programs. And so we can send them that data and say, look, here's what your overall market penetration rate is, inferred, right? But also, how many of your members are participating in these cost-saving programs, and maybe that's part of your messaging as well. So anyway, that's something that we've been doing now for, we're going on a year of doing that. And to my knowledge, no one else is providing the kind of data that we are specifically for chambers of commerce.
Well, it goes back to that old adage that you hear in business, like what isn't measured won't thrive.
That's right.
And so I've heard a bunch of different versions
You
of that.
can't manage what you don't measure.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's really incredible to think that you guys are doubling down on analytics and data for these chambers. Because, I mean, I've seen firsthand it's hard to know when you're winning. That's incredible.
Goes back to what I was saying before about the 4 critical challenges and that second one in particular. So, Brian, I'm an older guy. You're a lot younger than me. Your generation has grown up in an ocean of data and has come to expect that all business decisions are rooted in data. Now, if we have an entire industry that has been around for hundreds of years and is still not using data, I think that does not bode well for how your generation is going to view chambers of commerce over the course of time. It's quite a daunting challenge if you think about it. So we are trying to address that, not only for the chambers themselves, but then, how the younger audience and then the generation behind you views chambers in the long term. So that's really where our motivations lie. We're getting some really deep stuff here, but yeah, that's really the thought process behind it is, look, we not only want to help these chambers in the present, but we need to be thinking about the future as well. Otherwise, this brand that we've had for hundreds of years is just going to decay. And we need to do something about that.
100%. And I think that is a general issue across the spectrum inside of the business world. I think I am constantly networking inside of Cincinnati, all over. And generally, I'm one of the youngest in every room I'm in. And I'm in my 30s. So it's like, it is a very interesting problem that we have to solve to try to understand why are younger people, younger than me, or even my age, not viewing a connection inside of a chamber, inside of networking organizations. Why are they not viewing that as important?
Well, I think part of it, Brian, is is just messaging, right? So they just see the chamber as just like a networking organization, which is part of what a chamber does. But so to answer your question, I think they're like, well, I can just join a Facebook group, or I have this, I don't know, another Instagram group or whatever, just people that I message with, and that's it, right? But chambers are a lot more than that, right? Chambers, again, the chamber that I worked at prior to coming to SOCA, we started the workforce and economic development program within the county, right? So, think about that challenge for a minute.
It's a big challenge.
All of that entails, right? And here in the city of Cincinnati, right, the Cincinnati USA Regional Chamber has like a master plan for the entire area that they've rolled out, and they're executing that plan quite well, right? So it's just a lot more than showing up at a some sort of networking event where they're serving hors d'oeuvres and a couple of beers. And that's that. And there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, but you're not going to know that until you actually join your chamber and get involved in it.
So I don't know if this is something you guys are looking at, but obviously you guys are all about benefits and data, but do you guys do anything in the world of advice around marketing and messaging for chambers as they currently exist?
So we, on a limited basis.
Limited basis. Okay.
Yes. So we've taken that sort of those membership lists and those zip codes that I mentioned to you, right? And so we can know, let's just say the small town that I grew up in, Brookville, Ohio. At the time, I don't know, like 6,000 people in it. I don't know, it's probably grown to maybe 8,000. But
pretty small.
Yeah, very small. So the Brookville Chamber is a SOCA chamber, right? And they have sent us their membership list. We know the primary zip codes. And so we can also take the data that we have and from that say, okay, now we know the businesses in these zip codes that belong to the chamber and those who don't, right? So with technology being the way that it is today, we can send an email on behalf of that chamber. It looks, of course, like it comes from that chamber, inviting all of those non-members to a networking event or like a non-threatening thing and say, hey, look, business owners, if you haven't thought about joining your chamber, I'm personally inviting you to this event where we can just talk, and you'll meet other business owners in the community. And if you like what you see, hopefully you'll become a member. And then that's it, right? So we've been doing that for chambers within our test group with some success. Those chambers are generating memberships just out of these little innocuous emails that it's kind of like inviting someone to church, right?
Whoever said email marketing is dead. That's
I know,
not
right?
true. Yeah.
It works.
It works.
So that's one way that we're doing it. We're doing some other things, but
yeah. Well, the question kind of arose out of that initial mention. You said that younger generations don't see chambers as anything more than a networking group. Which is kind of funny then that you mentioned we invite people to networking groups with that email. But like, what do you think is a key thing that a chamber or people within a chamber, because there's a ton of businesses in these that are also representing their chamber, what can they do to represent it in a way that's helpful for people my age or younger?
That's a big question. That's a big question. Okay, so I think the way I'll answer that is, business owners generally join a chamber or are involved in a chamber for three basic reasons, right? First reason is, what can the Chamber of Commerce do for me, right? It's very transactional.
Completely.
If you're in a small chamber, we talked about this off camera before. If you're in a small chamber, that's a limited lifespan that you have, because within, let's just say again, I grew up in Brookville, that chamber, you're going to meet everybody that you're going to meet in that community probably within 2 years, right? So then what? What does your chamber membership mean to you then after that? So, which leads us to like the next kind of person who belongs to a chamber is, okay, now what can I do for the chamber, right? So it's up to not only that business owner, but also the chamber to engage that individual, that business owner, in serving on the board, serving on a committee, task forces that may be going on in your community, so they can get involved and sort of move the community forward. And then the third kind of business owner that joins the chamber is, what can I do for my community through the Chamber of Commerce, right? And you see a lot of the larger employers who yes, they want to make money just like anyone else does. They want to have a profitable bottom line, but they also want to be good stewards of their community. And they also want to maintain a certain amount of influence in their community as well, as a good employer, but also to be able to attract a younger workforce to them. So being a member of their local chamber is kind of a form of civic rent for them, but it really pays off for them in the long run. So I think chambers need to do a better job of communicating all of that to the younger generation, and just say, look, it's not about just meeting people, because otherwise, if what I've just described here, if you think about it on a spectrum, right? Otherwise, you're just over here on this one side of the spectrum. You've met everybody, and then, hey, 18 to 24 months into your membership, you're tapped out, and you're like, okay, I'm moving on to something else. So you just have to figure out ways to engage them, to move them across that spectrum.
That totally makes sense. And I think that there is because that's one of the things I didn't actually think about when joining a chamber, but it is pretty much the easiest way to get connected to a community.
That is correct.
And we've seen ever since really 2020 that there is a massive movement in younger people to try to make a difference in their community and in their nation. And I don't think people understand that chambers are built for that.
They are. They absolutely are. In many communities, they're considered like the hub of information, right? Now, it's interesting you say that. Let me just share an anecdote or just talk about the pandemic, right? So for us, right, we were primarily at that time, just involved in benefits and whatnot. And then all of a sudden when the pandemic hit and everyone was on lockdown, remember we have 129 chambers. All of a sudden we got into the information business and people were looking to us, to push out information. And so we were able to tap into some relationships that we have, not only through the U.S. Chamber, but like at that time, like Senator Portman's office was very helpful getting some information out to us. So we were able to broadcast that out to chambers of commerce. But the anecdote I wanted to share with you is that we recently had a phone call or had a Zoom call with a director in rural Southern Ohio, and her chamber has been growing substantially post-pandemic. And we asked, how's this happening? She said, well, we became the information source during the pandemic, and we proved ourselves, and that is it's paying a huge dividend for us, and we're getting new members. People our retention rate is very high.
Yeah.
We're still getting additional sponsorship because of that, right? So my point to that is that, in many communities, young people, right, they're like, well, what does the chamber really do? And then a crisis hits, and then that Chamber of Commerce becomes pretty damn important on being the voice of that community. So I've seen that happen over and over again, not just through the pandemic, but through the Great Recession, housing crisis, the mortgage crisis, I should say, and whatnot. So crises tend to elevate what a Chamber of Commerce should do.
Well, and the proven time and time again theory is that crisis brings people together. Mm-hmm. And I think the chamber is seen as a gathering place.
That is correct.
Which is powerful.
Absolutely correct.
And selfishly, as an organization, you want chambers to grow because it increases your membership, but also that what you provide has immense value to people and business owners.
So my BHAG, my
big, hairy, audacious goal.
I love it. Is for, it would be my dream if 50% of all employers in the state of Ohio belong to a Chamber of Commerce, right? But that's a lofty goal.
It is. It is. Now, I don't know if you have these numbers. I didn't mean for this podcast to all be about numbers, but I think it's interesting because you guys have worked hard to try to understand it. When somebody, say, enters your MIWA and they are receiving healthcare benefits from you guys, are you noticing that they are actually saving quite a bit of money by entering that program? Or?
It's hard for us to determine that because we don't know what they were paying beforehand.
Yeah.
Right.
Or maybe anecdotally, have you heard?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So anecdotally, through our network of broker agencies who write business for us, we've heard savings of anywhere from 6% all the way up to 48% compared to what someone was paying before. So it just depends on, what that employer's situation was beforehand. But we have a very large network of brokers that we can rely upon. So let me actually add to that. One of the things I'm most proud of with the MIWA and how it's grown is that we now have 435 agencies. That's not just agents, but agencies who have written business for us into this plan.
Wow.
So I say that to say this, like, when we started this with Anthem, and Anthem has just been an amazing partner. This is the first. Ohio was the first state that Anthem did this in, right? They have since been able to take this model into a few other states, not a lot, but a few. And occasionally I receive a phone call from some of these other states or from a state that's considering doing it. And they'll say, how did you guys get to be so big? And the first thing I'll ask them is, well, how many brokers do you have, offering the product for you? And, I'll get answers like, well, we got like 6, or we've got a dozen. And we'll be like, well, I got 435. And there's your answer, right?
Yeah.
You're already filling a need. If you're working with a carrier, especially if you're working with a carrier like Anthem, you've already got a good product out there. So now it just comes down to distribution. And if you're limiting it to just 6 or 12 brokers, I'm here to tell you that's a tough road to hoe. You need to expand that distribution as much as you can.
Well, and that's a big deal, and that's why. Now, correct me on this. You said the largest MIWA in the entire country is.
We believe we are operating the largest MIWA in the entire United States.
And here in Southern Ohio.
Yes.
That's crazy. And it's because you guys recognize that there is extreme value here and that businesses are hurting for something like this.
That's right.
They need it. And you guys started it before the ACA even existed. So you were...
No, that's not right.
Or not right.
We did it in response to...
In response to the MIWA. Okay, sorry. Right.
Yeah.
And so you guys were seeing this need in a big way. And I think it's super admirable to see what you guys have grown it to. That's incredible.
Well, like I mentioned before, we thought it'd be a temporary thing until Congress sort of, shored up some things, and it's just taken on a life of its own. And we have great partners. Look, we just do. Anthem's been a fantastic partner. We have amazing brokers who work with us. We have a company called Consoliplex Health Plan Management who handles like all of our compliance and accounting functions. So we're just very fortunate to be in the position we're in.
That's incredible. Now, I'm thinking that there's probably a audience that isn't just in Cincinnati who might be listening to your story, and they're starting to recognize, hey, how do I do this in my space? Because I'm sure that there are other chamber alliances all across the United States. There's not?
Actually, there's not.
There's not.
Ohio is very unique. So Ohio is very unique in two respects. So first, we're talking about the MIWA. Ohio is known as a competitive state as it relates to health insurance, and that's another reason why, like, you don't see this kind of thing in other states. You'll have, when I say competitive states, there are, you got Anthem, Medical Mutual, United Healthcare, Aetna, Humana. They have all, historically, of course, Humana's getting out of the small employer market, but they've competed for business in the state of Ohio for quite some time. In other states, they don't have that kind of competition, and so there's really no incentive for them to start a program like this because one or two carriers just sort of dominate the market. Now, as it relates to the alliances, as a consequence, right, you don't get a lot of these alliances in the U.S. I've gone to ACCE, conferences and whatnot, and sat down at a table full of chamber executives, and we all sort of introduce ourselves, and they're from individual chambers, and then when I tell them what I do, they just kind of look at me like I have three heads. They're like, we have nothing like that in our state, right? So Ohio is very unique, and in my opinion, very fortunate in that regard.
Okay, so explain this to me, because I am a dunce in the world of health insurance, but I've never heard of anything different than the ability to compete. What does it look like in other states then that is so different?
Well, they just don't have enough carriers, insurance carriers there who are
like licensed in the state.
Well,
or
I don't know, but if they are, there's just not as much competition as there is in the state of Ohio, right? And competition, being a chamber guy, competition generally is helpful to everyone because it forces every competitor to innovate, compete on price, compete on service, and all of the other stuff, right?
Well, it just shows how Ohio became a meme for a reason. It exists because we're pretty unique, and it's pretty incredible the way that Ohio fosters its care for its business owners, its care for employees. And I think it's really impressive what you guys are doing to top all that off to try and really help bring all that extra value.
Appreciate that.
I've got one last question for you before I want to have you give your pitch to everybody. But just walk through real quick. What are some of the big things that you offer to chambers, and what are some of the surprising things that people may not know, benefit wise, that you offer people?
So for chambers, everything that we do, every program that we run, a employer has to belong to their local chamber in order to, get in the program, right? So what we offer the chambers is we not only help them grow membership, recruit new members, but retain existing ones as well. In some of our programs, there is an opportunity for non-dues revenue, so that's what we would offer to chambers. The second part of your question, I'm just going to say this, right? So we not only offer like the health plan and whatnot, but we have a menu of a dozen other programs that we run. I've mentioned before the energy program. That's a big deal. Especially, we work with a company called Community Energy Advisors out of Medina, Ohio.
Is it pronounced Medina? I always thought it was Medina. I don't
Medina,
know. It's
right?
Medina.
It's
I'm
Medina.
so wrong. Oh my gosh.
Sorry, right?
Guys. Sorry, Medina.
Right. So one of the big things that's going on in that industry is qualifying for REAP grants. So these are rural energy grants, right? That many small employers can apply for, and most employers don't know that they could be eligible for this kind of grant. So what I would ask them to do is go to our website at joinsoca.com, look for the energy program, and fill out the form there. Say, hey, I'm interested in learning more about these REAP grants, REAP, and we can put you in touch with the folks over there at Community Energy Advisors, see if it's the right thing for you.
That's really cool. Yeah, I think that's incredible that you guys are connecting smaller businesses with grants, because that's always one of the hardest things to know that even exist out there.
That's right.
That's awesome. All right, well, that's your camera. Give your 30-second pitch. Why do you do what you do? And assume that the person's just never heard of you before.
So we create value for local chambers of commerce. We do it in 3 ways. We negotiate benefits and affinity programs for chambers of commerce so that they can offer them to members. These programs are cost savings and value-added programs. If you have not yet decided to join your local chamber of commerce, please do so. It's a great way for not only for you to advance the local business community within your area, but also to advance the community itself. You will find in many of those chambers that they're working on some pretty heady things, things like economic development, things like workforce development, in order to set the groundwork in the infrastructure, so to speak, to make your business grow over the long term. So that would be my appeal to you. If you don't belong to a local chamber of commerce, please consider it.
100% agree, because chambers bring a ton of value, like we've already talked about for the last 40 minutes. This is, and you guys, what you do is just icing on top. It's incredible. So I am so grateful that you were here today. Thank you for spending your time, sharing a little bit about what SOCA does. I think that everyone here that is listening to the show has gotten a ton of value out of it. So really appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.